The International Hotel in Las Vegas was quiet on the afternoon of July 31st, 1968. Elvis Presley sat alone in his penthouse suite, staring at a bottle of prescription pills on the coffee table in front of him. He'd been sitting there for 2 hours, contemplating whether to take all of them at once. At 33 years old, Elvis felt like his life was over. His movie career had devolved into embarrassing beach party films. He hadn't performed a live concert in 7 years. His marriage to Priscilla was crumbling. The music industry had moved on without him, and he felt irrelevant, washed up, a relic from a different era. The comeback special that would air in December was still months away from taping. Right now, in this hotel room, Elvis was convinced he had nothing left to offer the world. The pills on the table represented an escape, a way out of the pain and failure and disappointment that had become his daily existence. There was a knock on the door. Elvis didn't respond, hoping whoever it was would go away. The knock came again, followed by a woman's accented voice. "Housekeeping. I clean room now." Elvis still didn't respond, but the door opened anyway. The hotel had given housekeeping a key with instructions to service the suite, whether Elvis was present or not. A small woman in her 50s entered, pushing a cleaning cart. She had dark hair, pulled back in a bun, and wore the standard hotel uniform. She glanced at Elvis sitting on the couch, but showed no sign of recognition. She simply nodded politely and began cleaning the room. Her name was Maria Santos, though Elvis would never learn that. She was a recent immigrant from the Philippines who'd arrived in America just 6 months earlier. She spoke minimal English and had taken the housekeeping job at the International Hotel to support her family back home. She had no idea who Elvis Presley was. In the Philippines, his music hadn't penetrated the way it had in America and Europe. To her, he was just another guest in one of the hundreds of rooms she cleaned every week. As Maria worked, she began to sing quietly to herself. It was something she always did while cleaning, a habit from childhood that made the work go faster. The song was in Tagalog, her native language, a folk melody her grandmother had taught her about resilience and hope and the cycles of life. Elvis heard the singing and looked up. The melody was beautiful, haunting, nothing like the American pop music he was surrounded by constantly. The woman's voice was untrained but pure, filled with emotion that transcended language. For the first time in hours, Elvis felt something other than despair. He felt curious. "Excuse me," Elvis said. The woman stopped singing and turned to him, looking worried that she'd disturbed him. "What were you singing?" Maria looked confused. Her English was very limited, and Elvis's question was complicated. "Song," she said simply. "From my country." "What do the words mean?" Elvis asked. "Can you translate?" Maria struggled to find the English words. Her vocabulary was basic, learned mostly from cleaning instructions and simple conversations, but she tried. Songs say, "Every day, sun comes up. New day, old day, gone, erased." She made a wiping motion with her hand to demonstrate the word, erased. "Every morning, new chance, new beginning." Elvis stared at her. The simple translation hit him like a physical blow. Every day, the sun comes up to erase the previous day. Every morning, a new chance, a new beginning. It was such a basic concept, something any motivational poster might say. But hearing it in that moment, from this woman who didn't know him, who wasn't trying to fix him or save him or profit from him, it broke something open inside him. Tears started streaming down Elvis's face. Maria stopped cleaning, alarmed. She didn't understand what was happening, why this stranger was suddenly crying. But she recognized pain when she saw it. She'd seen enough suffering in her life, had fled enough hardship in her homeland to know despair when it was sitting in front of her. Maria looked at Elvis for a long moment. Then she did something that would have gotten her fired if anyone had found out. She set down her cleaning supplies, walked over to the couch, and sat down next to this crying man she didn't recognize. She didn't say anything. She didn't ask what was wrong or try to offer solutions. She simply placed her hand on his back and began rubbing it gently in small circles, the way a mother comforts a child. Elvis couldn't stop crying. All the pain, all the failure, all the loneliness and fear came pouring out. And this stranger, this hotel maid who had no idea she was comforting the most famous entertainer in the world, just sat with him. She didn't speak because she couldn't, not in English, not in a way that would have made sense to him. But her presence, her touch, her willingness to just be there with another human being in pain communicated more than words ever could. They sat like that for 15 minutes. Maria kept her hand on Elvis's back, occasionally making soft, comforting sounds that transcended language. Elvis cried until he had no tears left, until the emotional storm passed and he could breathe again. And through it all, this anonymous woman he'd never met before stayed with him, offering comfort without judgment, without recognition, without any agenda except human kindness. Finally, Elvis wiped his eyes and looked at her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know why you did that, but thank you." Maria smiled, not fully understanding his words, but recognizing gratitude. She stood up, returned to her cleaning cart, and continued working as if nothing unusual had happened. Elvis watched her move around the room, this ordinary woman who'd just saved his life without knowing it, without even knowing who he was. Before she left, Elvis stopped her. He pulled out his wallet and took out all the cash he had, several $100s. He tried to hand it to her, but Maria shook her head firmly. She pointed to herself, then to her heart, then to him. The message was clear. What she'd done wasn't for money. It was human to human, heart to heart. Elvis put the money back, nodding his understanding. Maria smiled again, gathered her cleaning supplies, and left the room. Elvis never saw her again. Elvis looked at the pill bottle on the coffee table. Then he picked it up, walked to the bathroom, and flushed the contents down the toilet. He called the front desk and asked to speak to his manager. When Joe Esposito came to the room 20 minutes later, Elvis was standing by the window, looking out at Las Vegas with something approaching hope on his face. "I want to do the comeback special," Elvis said. "Not the way Colonel Parker wants it, sitting on a stool singing Christmas songs. I want to do it raw, real, the way I used to perform. Rock and roll, gospel, everything that made me who I was. And I want it to mean something." Joe was surprised. He'd seen Elvis in a dark place for months, worried about where his client and friend was heading. This sudden energy, this determination, was unexpected, but welcome. "What changed?" Joe asked. Elvis thought about the hotel maid, about her song, about the 15 minutes of silent comfort from a stranger. "I was reminded that every day the sun comes up to erase the previous day," Elvis said. "Every morning is a new chance to be who you're supposed to be." The comeback special taped in June 1968 and aired in December. It was everything Elvis had wanted it to be, raw and powerful and real. He performed in black leather, sweat pouring down his face, connecting with the small audience in the television studio the way he'd connected with audiences in his early days. The broadcast was watched by over 42 million people and proved that Elvis Presley wasn't washed up or irrelevant. He was still vital, still powerful, still capable of touching people with his music. Years later, in a private interview that later became public, Elvis talked about that afternoon in the hotel room. He didn't reveal how close he'd come to ending his life, but he talked about the Maid and what she'd meant to him. "I was in a dark place," Elvis said, "the darkest place I'd ever been, and this woman came into my room, didn't know who I was, didn't care. She just sang this song about new beginnings and then sat with me while I cried like a baby. She didn't ask for anything, didn't want recognition or money or anything. She just offered comfort because that's what decent human beings do for each other." Elvis tried to find her afterward. He asked the hotel management about the Filipino cleaning woman who'd been in his suite on July 31st. But the International Hotel employed dozens of housekeepers, many of them recent immigrants. Without a name or more specific description, they couldn't identify which woman had cleaned his room that day. Maria Santos had disappeared back into anonymity, unaware of the impact those 15 minutes had on one of the most famous men in the world. Over the years, Elvis never stopped wondering about the woman who'd saved his life. He'd occasionally tell the story to close friends, always with the caveat that he never learned her name, never got to properly thank her, never got to tell her what that moment had meant to him. In 1977, just months before his death, Elvis was doing an interview about his career and legacy. The interviewer asked what moment stood out as most significant in his comeback from the wilderness, years of bad movies and poor records. Elvis surprised the interviewer by not talking about the comeback special or his return to live performing. Instead, he talked about a hotel maid. "The most important moment of my career wasn't on stage or in a recording studio," Elvis said. "It was in a hotel room in Vegas, sitting on a couch, crying my eyes out while a stranger rubbed my back and made me feel like maybe I was worth saving. That woman, whoever she was, gave me back my life. Everything that came after, the special, the concerts, all of it, that only happened because she was kind enough to sit with a broken man and make him feel less alone." The interviewer pushed for more details, but Elvis didn't have any to give. He didn't know her name, didn't know where she came from, didn't even know if she still worked at the hotel. She was anonymous, a phantom, an angel who'd appeared exactly when needed, and then vanished back into the world. Maria Santos continued working at the International Hotel until 1975, when she saved enough money to bring her family to America. She never knew that the crying man she'd comforted in 1968 was Elvis Presley. She never connected the famous entertainer she'd occasionally see on television with the sad stranger in the penthouse suite. It wasn't until 1989, 12 years after Elvis's death, that she learned the truth. Maria's daughter, who'd grown up in America and become fluent in English, was watching a documentary about Elvis that included the interview where he talked about the hotel maid. Maria was in the room and heard her daughter gasp. "Mama, listen to this. This is about a hotel maid in 1968. As Elvis's voice described the encounter, Maria realized with shock that he was talking about her. The date matched, the hotel matched, the song she'd sung, the comfort she had offered, all of it matched perfectly. The crying man had been Elvis Presley, and she'd had no idea. Maria broke down crying, overwhelmed by the revelation. She'd been kind to a stranger because that's what her grandmother had taught her to do, what her faith demanded, what basic human decency required. She'd never expected recognition or reward. But knowing that those 15 minutes of compassion had meant so much to someone, that her simple act of sitting with a suffering person had helped him find his way back, that was overwhelming. A reporter eventually tracked Maria down after her daughter shared the story publicly. In a 1990 interview, Maria talked about that afternoon for the first time. "I didn't know who he was," Maria said through a translator. "I just saw a man in pain, and I did what anyone should do. I sat with him. I offered what comfort I could. My grandmother always said that music can speak when words cannot, and kindness requires no language. I sang my grandmother's song because it brought me comfort when I was far from home and sad. Maybe the spirit of the song reached him even if he couldn't understand the words." Asked if she wished she'd known who Elvis was, Maria shook her head. "If I'd known, I might have been scared or acted differently. I might have not been myself. Sometimes God arranges things so we can help each other as human beings, not as famous and ordinary, not as important and unimportant, just as people. That afternoon, we were just two people, and one needed comfort and the other could give it. That's all. That's enough." The story of Elvis and the hotel maid became cherished not for fame or success, but because it revealed the power of human connection. In his darkest moment, Elvis wasn't saved by talent, fame, or wealth. He was saved by a stranger's kindness, by a simple song about new beginnings, by 15 minutes of silent comfort from someone who wanted nothing in return. Maria Santos died in 2008 at age 93, surrounded by family in Las Vegas. Among her possessions was a framed photo of Elvis from the 1968 comeback special, the performance that happened because she had once sung to a broken stranger. Her family said she would sometimes watch that recording and cry, still amazed her simple kindness had mattered. Today, when people speak of Elvis's comeback, most focus on the performance and its impact. But those who know the real story understand it began earlier, in a hotel room, with a maid who sang about new beginnings and stayed until he could breathe again. That anonymous angel proved that the deepest human connections often happen between strangers, that compassion needs no spotlight, and that sometimes the greatest thing one can do is simply stay. Maria Santos never sought fame, But her 15 minutes of compassion changed music history and reminded us that we can save each other with nothing more than presence and kindness.